Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's install, we're going to show you how to integrate your factory steering wheel volume controls and other features on the steering wheel to your new aftermarket radio. Let's get started. Now this vehicle has an aftermarket radio, but yet it's not compatible with the steering wheel volume controls. So we have this here in the shop here today, and what we're going to be doing is pulling out the radio, and we're going to show you the parts needed to integrate your new aftermarket radio to those buttons on the steering wheel if so equipped. Now what we'll do is go ahead and get this radio on out, and we need to pull a couple of parts from this install, and we're gonna need an adapter here today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull this radio on out, and let's head over to the bench to show you the parts that we're gonna need for our install. Okay, so here at the bench, now the part that we're gonna need in order for us to integrate those steering wheel volume controls and track controls, etc., to the new aftermarket radio is some sort of module like this. Now this one's by Pac Audio. This is the C4RAD steering wheel control module, and essentially here it will adapt those factory controls to our new aftermarket radio. This one's pretty cool. It's very universal and it fits a ton of different year, makes, and models. If you want to see if this module is compatible with your vehicle, head over to the Pac and use their fit guide. We'll link that website down in the description here for you. So let's head to the computer. We're going to use their fit guide and see exactly what wires we need to tap into and what switches we need to set in order for this to work for our radio today. Okay, so we're here at the computer, and we've specifically gone to pac-audio.com/C4RAD/. This website will be linked in the description of the video for your convenience as well. Now, specifically here, we're going to check to see if our vehicle is compatible with this module, and secondly, once we have confirmed, it's actually going to show us how to install this module within our vehicle itself. Now, in this vehicle fit guide, this is how you can check compatibility. If you don't see it listed here, you'll click on "Don't see your vehicle?" ? Today, in the install bay, our test vehicle happens to be a Honda Cross Tour, which is right there, 2012. So our vehicle indeed is listed, no option. And then lastly here, you're gonna have to select the radio for which you're gonna be installing this module to. In most instances, it's going to be listed here. If you happen to be using those knockoff, no-name branded radio, it's probably running Android, so you want to use an Android radio. In our case today, we're going to be using a Pioneer, so we'll click on Pioneer, we'll hit Next. And what's cool about this, it immediately shows us a dip switch configuration. When we head back to the bench, we're going to show you the module itself, and there's going to be these two sets of dip switches. The first dip switch set essentially is going to be the vehicle that we're installing this to. Second dip switch set generally is the radio that we're installing to this module. So according to our instructions here, down happens to be on, up happens to be off. So 1 through 4 is down, which is on. 5 through 8 is up, which is off. And then for our second set of the dips, which is the same thing, 1 through 3 is down, which is on. And then number 4 is up, which is off. Again, we'll put screenshots of this in a minute when we're actually installing this, so this makes a lot more sense. We'll hit Next. Now, our module will come with default button options. It's already pre-programmed with a ton of different features. However, what's even cooler about this module is you can reassign or reroute those steering wheel buttons to exactly the way you want it. You don't have to just accept what they're providing you. You can customize it exactly the way you want it within your vehicle itself. And we'll cover that here in a moment within our instructions. We'll hit Next. Now this last page is super important because what it's showing us is the wiring provided by our Pac module and where exactly within the vehicle it needs to connect to, and specifically the colors and the harnesses that it's located in. This is really cool because you don't have to track down these wires in many different places. It's literally going to show you exactly where to look, what pin number it's located at, what side of the pin that we need to look at, and once that's done, it'll also show you how we connect this module to our radio directly. Now the nice thing is you can print this off and have this with you side by side at the bench or in your vehicle, wherever you happen to be doing your install here today. These are super important to have with us. We're going to print these out, take some screenshots, and we'll reference these later on when we're actually doing the install. So at this point of time, let's head back to the bench, unbox our module, and show you how all this information pertains to our install today. Right, so we're back from the computer. We know what we need to connect into. Let's go ahead and get this thing pulled apart. All right, so here is our steering wheel control module here. It does come with a little bit of information. Now the cool thing about this, not only does it come pre-programmed once you set those dip switches, but you can also still manually program this to your own liking. This thing is super versatile. We love using these, and they're actually very budget friendly. Flip this on over. You can reassign buttons. That walks you through that as well. It has your different configurations based on the brand of radio. And then down here, if you want to reassign your steering wheel volume controls based on the radio that you're installing, here is the layout there. So this kit is awesome. Go ahead and read your instructions thoroughly. It's always recommended when you're installing something. Let's look at our wiring directly here. Now, like I said, it comes with a harness and the main module itself. Now the module is going to have a set of dip switches here. Now, like we saw in the instruction manual, here is your reassignment button. This is where the harness plugs in. This is where your output goes to, your steering wheel controls. It is a USB updatable, and that's it. Can be mounted. You can tape this, you can hide this. It's a nice small module. Comes with these two bits here. This end is what output essentially goes to the radio that you're connecting. Now, radios like Alpine, Pioneer, Sony, they use a WR 3.5 millimeter jack steering wheel control input, kind of like this. It looks like an aux, but it isn't. Other brands, off brands, Kenwoods, JVCs will use the wire instead of the jack. And then this end just plugs into the module. Now on this, we have some wiring here. Comes with a built-in fuse, which is really nice. Now, you may use all of the wires, some of the wires, or very few of the wires. Every vehicle is going to be different. Now, what's cool about what we've done about our research, as we went to Pac's website, they have indicated exactly what wire we need and where exactly it goes within the vehicle, color by color, pin by pin. So there's not a lot of guesswork. So we know there's some colors here we're not going to use for our install. So looking at the wires, per our configuration, the only one that doesn't match up is we don't have a yellow. This doesn't have a yellow wire, which is your constant 12 volts. It's not required, so we don't actually have to hook it up. Now, it does require accessory, so we'll tap into accessory. Now we have two grounds. You can use one or the other. They're both pinned the same. One ground's going to be to ground the module. The other one's going to be a ground for a wire within our steering wheel controls. It shows these three wires to make specific connections within the vehicle, and it looks like the only one that we don't need is this green guy, so we can cut and tape that off because it's not going to be used in our application. Now here we have our radio harness that we've pulled out of the vehicle. This end was plugged into the factory plug, and then this end was into our Pioneer. We've already pulled the tape off and prepared it here, and essentially we can snag power and ground here to power this module for us. We don't have to look for power elsewhere. It's really nice. So we can snag red, which is our accessory wire here, and black, which is our ground. Now those are going to be the only two wires that we're going to have available within this harness. So we're going to connect per our instructions, power and ground to those two. We'll just tee into those and solder in. And these four wires, these other four connections, we'll have to connect manually. We don't have a harness adapter to plug into, but we'll show you a technique we like to use here in the garage, which is pretty low invasive. It's less invasive. We're not really hacking up the harness. We're just simply tapping into that wire. So what we'll do is hold off to make these connections a little bit later on. So we've stripped those wires back there. We didn't break the connection. We just pulled the shielding back with our wire strippers. And we're going to use this pick tool here. And we're going to poke right through that wire to make a loop. See that there? Poke that through. And what we'll do is grab our red and our black. And again, either black is fine because it's essentially pinned the same. Okay, so we got those here. And what we're doing is snagging power and ground for our module right off a radio harness. So we're gonna just stick it through that loop here. Like threading a needle. And then what we're gonna do is wrap our copper wire up and around that connection. Just like that. We're gonna do the same with our accessory or power wire here. What we like to do is put a lick of solder on there, so it really ensures that connection is nice and solid. All right, so we got those all soldered in there. Now we're gonna grab some electrical tape just to protect those connections. We don't want any shorts here. And that's the only 2 wires we need out of our radio harness. I mean, essentially we could manually connect those back behind the factory plug, but this is here and available, makes it nice and easy. Let's go ahead and loom those up. All right, so we made our connections, we re-loomed up our harness. This is going to power our module with accessory and ground. Again, we have our secondary ground that needs to go to another pin that's not available here in this harness. And we have these other guys. Now remember, according to our instructions, we don't need green. So we're just gonna cut that guy short, just like that. And these last 3 will have to be manual connections in the vehicle. Now we're gonna use the same technique that we just did here, using our wire strippers to strip the wire back ever so slightly. We're gonna use our little pick tool and we'll thread the wire, just like threading a needle, to make our other 3 connections per our instructions, as you can see here on the screen. There's 3 different harnesses that we need to connect our 4 wires here. We're gonna set this guy off to the side. And finally, talk about our dip switches. Now again, what we're gonna do is pull up our dip switches here on the left-hand side. And you can see we need to mirror these dip switches identical to the way it's indicated from Pac's website. All right, there we go. Got those all set. So those are done. Now you can tape over these, you can ensure that they just don't get bumped, but we're done here. And this is basically set up for the default dip switches. Now again, you can go through your instructions and manually program in case you want to do things differently. But for us, for right now, these are done and good to go. Now in our case, we're not going to be using this guy, so we can insulate this guy. But this end, because we are doing a Pioneer, goes to the wired remote or WR input on the back of the radio. We have our dip switches set and our harness that goes to the radio. That is what we need to do here at the bench. The rest of our connections, we have to head back to the car and make those. So let's do so. All right, so we're here back in the vehicle and we have our harnesses that plugged into our radio or aftermarket radio. Sometimes you don't use all of them, sometimes you do. It just depends on your make and model, radio, and the harness adapter you're using. Now in our situation, our vehicle only called for a basic harness, and so a lot of these harnesses will remain unplugged. Now, based on your vehicle, you have to stick to the wiring guidelines indicated by Pac. It's going to show you exactly what harness you need to tap into and what wire in that harness needs to connect to your Pac module. So we have a few different gray harnesses here. Now our main harness plug here, the first one we need to connect into, and it's the number of pins as indicated in our diagram. We need to connect a ground. Now pin number 11, we counted there, it happens to be brown, and we found pin number 11 matching the picture in our diagram is a ground. Same principle, use the wire strippers, strip back the shielding, threaded our wire through that, and again, we're gonna put a little lick of solder on that connection. Connection number 2 also happens to be in this harness, and it indicates that this white wire in our Pac module needs to connect into this wire, this pink wire in this harness. And again, we're looking at the pin number, making sure it matches exactly. You just cannot hook this up to the wrong wire. You can cause damage. So it shows that we need to connect into this pink wire in this specific pin location in our instructions, as you can see there. Now it shows a secondary harness that we need to tap into, and it looks like a 16-pin harness. We only have one here, so we found our 16-pin harness, and it happens to be this guy right here. Same principle. What you do is find the pin number looking either at the wire side or the connector side. In this case, it's a brown wire that we need to connect our white with a black stripe to according to our instructions. Same principle, use our wire stripper, strip back the shielding, pig tool, then we thread the needle. We thread the wire with our wire, and again, we'll put a lick of solder. So that is our third connection that we've made here. And then finally, our fourth connection. According to our instructions, we need to tap into a 24-pin harness, which is up here. And this 24-pin harness, in the location it indicates, this light bluish wire, we need to connect our white with a red stripe. Now again, same principle, stripped it back, and we're gonna solder onto that. So we've made all the connections, finding the harness with the same number of pins as indicated by the Pac website. We've stripped the wire, we've soldered in there, and what we're gonna do is tape up those connections once we put the lick of solder on there. If you use something other than soldering, like if you're using T-taps or something like that, keep in mind that can increase the amount of resistance in that connection. As a result, may not allow those steering wheel controls to operate properly. So keep that in mind. So we've made our connections here. We're going to go ahead and clean up those connections and relume our harnesses like factory. And really at the end here, we need to do a test. All right, so we went ahead and buttoned everything up here. We first put electrical tape on those connections and then relumed it with some tested tape here. Got all of those specific connections taken care of. So we are done. Now, before we button everything up, it's always a great idea to go ahead and test. If you don't test your equipment after you get everything installed, you may find yourself pulling everything back apart and having a lot of frustration. So let's go ahead and test, make sure all our buttons work properly here. And once we confirm everything is working as intended, we can go ahead and reassemble the radio. Okay, so we got the radio temporarily in place to allow us at this point to go ahead and test everything before we button up this install. Now, we're gonna go ahead and turn the key, boot up the radio for the first time. Now you can see our module has turned on because again, it's pulling power from the radio. All right, so the radio is booted up here. We're gonna come over to our steering wheel control. We're gonna hit up. And you can see that flash. We're gonna hit down. Perfect, we're gonna test our track up. Track down. Perfect, we're gonna hit mode. And based on your install, you may have a ton more buttons here, only a few. We only have 3. Sometimes you have Bluetooth buttons like answer call, end call, voice recognition. You know, it just really depends on your year, make, and model. But the cool thing about this install, this module works with everything. So nice thing is we fed this all the way down here at the bottom. So let's say if we got this all the way in place and we want to reassign, we can. You use that program button, follow your instruction, and essentially this will allow you to reassign the buttons to exactly the way you want them. So since we've confirmed everything's working, we can button up the radio here and finish up this install. All right, there we are, all done. Everything's all reassembled, looks nice and clean. And that really takes care of this install here today. Now, if you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. We hope that this was a helpful tutorial for you in the event you buy a vehicle that has an aftermarket radio, but yet are not connected to the steering wheel volume controls. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. I post great content on the channel all the time, and we'll see you in the next video.